I've got faith in our millennial generations and our alpha generations coming behind, because
Yeah.
they're really progressive, and I think there's so many of our systems that have served us very well in society, but some of them are outdated, and it's time to change. And I think mental health is one of them, and that includes emotional intelligence and how we connect to each other and ourselves. That really needs to be taught and celebrated in so many ways, because if we don't do something, I don't want to know what the future looks like if we keep going this way.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, on that note, I'd love to hear some success stories from things you've seen in your practice, for someone coming in and they were like A and they left like B, um,
Mhm.
and because I think a lot of people that are skeptical about these things, for one, because they're illegal, which makes sense, but also there's that lack of control. Like if you know, I think a lot of people self-medicate with alcohol because I think they feel
Yeah.
like it lightens the mental load, which on some hand maybe it does, but then the downward effects are quite awful, which we
Mm.
all know about now, from
Mhm.
mental to physiological, etc. But I love people to hear more stories of people you've seen in your clinic that have come in and seen some real success, because I imagine you don't do this work because you don't see that all the time. I imagine you see a lot of really amazing journeys.
I do, and I think that's probably the blessing of my job is I get to learn so much about people and their
Mm,
experiences and the hardships they've been through, where they've come from and where they're going. In terms of being able to share like specific stories, I can't ethically. However,
right.
I will say that around supporting the people that I have supported that have come in following what you may refer to as a bad trip, I would call a challenging experience following plant medicines, self medicating, I have seen people really turn a corner. And that's purely from the difference of A, being open following the medicine journey, but B, then also trusting me as the mental health professional to allow them to go into those corners of their life which may be driving those anxieties. I've seen some people turning some incredible corners. I won't really comment anymore on that. I don't want to out myself in things I shouldn't out myself in terms of
Right.
patient presentations. But I can say that the research that is coming out around these plant medicines, it is absolutely what we see across the board in clinical setting.
Wow.
People liken these plant medicines to 20 years of therapy.
Yeah, I mean, I always said 10.
It's
So that's
yeah,
pretty incredible. Yeah. So yeah, that's a
it
shame that you
is.
can't share, because I thought even if people remain nameless, could you say like someone comes in with a X trauma and they leave, like
Mhm.
is there any way you could say this by staying ethically within the bounds of
Mm.
privacy?
Uh, Let me think.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Um, I saw a patient. Um, I saw a patient following an underground medicine journey.
Hmm.
That medicine journey was okay. It wasn't considered something difficult, but they ended up developing a phobia of spiders. They'd never previously had a phobia. Attached to this phobia of spiders was a lot of resentment towards their partner at the time as well. But in the time I've been able to support this patient over the last sort of 6 months, that patient has been able to understand where that phobia has come from, and we've remitted that. We've actually resolved that phobia. And it
Wow.
came from an experience in their childhood related to their family and their parents. Really, really impactful. And their medicine journey was actually unrelated. So I guess the power of these medicines, what they can do is they can actually bring other things to the surface for people that may be the thing that people end up in therapy for help and looking for support. And if there's one thing that I would suggest to people is to look for clinicians that are trained in psychedelic assisted therapy. Not everyone trained in psychedelic assisted therapy delivers the clinical therapy, but by having the knowledge of what the medicines are, what they do, how they get sat with, how they impact the brain and the body, that person
Mm,
is going to be more skilled in understanding how to help you psychologically with any anxieties that come up, any sleep disturbances that come up, any resurgence of PTSD.
right. Well, I imagine even if someone that is going to do an underground session, if they can
Mhm.
understand what the more MAPS protocol or the above ground protocols for dosage could be, maybe they could at least instruct these underground therapists to say, like, I know what you want to give me, but I would
Mhm.
like you to follow this.
Mhm. Mhm. Some of the above ground therapists work in harm minimization realms. So I have also supported people through this. I have no recommendations and do not endorse any form of illegal access to plant medicines of any kind.
Fair.
But if someone comes to me and says that they are interested and what do they need to know, we talk about the risks and benefits. If that person then goes off and finds an underground therapist and does things on their own volition, that's fine. But part of my conscience is sharing that education and sharing that knowledge and making sure people feel informed making those decisions. I feel like a lot of the underground are not trained in these areas in many
Yeah.
cases and do not provide this information for people where they can feel informed as to whether that's a good idea for themselves or not.